Welcome, everybody, back to Beyond the Riverwalk. This is Kevin Barron. I'm your host, and tonight we have some special guests from another podcast here in San Antonio called Texas Music Spotlight. But before we get there, let me remind you to go back and listen to last week's show. Last week we had Jordan and Mike from SA Food Tours. We talked about their Downtown Delicacies tour. We talked about some of the people we met and the restaurants that we went to. And if you're interested in doing the same thing, because a lot of locals now are going on these tours, believe it or not, I would suggest you go back, listen to the episode, because there is a discount code that is talked about in the episode, and we're going to make you listen to it. Go back and listen to the episode, get the discount code, and then register at least a couple weeks ahead of time, because their tours fill up. It's a small group of about 10, so you'll get great attention, and you'll really enjoy it. We definitely did. So if you would, go back and listen to that one. Go back and listen to our previous episodes. If you've got suggestions for show ideas or guests, we are always open to those. You can email us at podcast@beyondriverwalk.com. So without further ado, let's go over to Julian and Julian. Julian Escobedo?
Yes, that's good.
And they host kind of alternately, 1 week and then maybe another, the Texas Music Spotlight podcast. So thank you very much, guys, for joining me.
Thank you for asking us, man. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Well, you have definitely gotten me a new obsession to listening to history and stories. And I guess that's one of the things that caught my attention so much about the podcast y'all do, is that you talk to people about their own personal experience and their history and why they got into doing what they're doing. But before that, I guess, tell us a little bit, and everybody that's listening, what is Texas Music Spotlight?
Texas Music Spotlight was initially created to showcase bands from all over Texas. And when we first started it, it was we had a different format online to where you could actually call in and videos talk with the artist. And the format was good because when you finished the recording and you finished the video broadcast, they sent you the audio file. So we said, let's just make it into a podcast. So you get a little bit of both worlds, the interaction with video chat, and then being able to convert the audio into a podcast. And that was our initial start of the podcast. And I told my son about this, which I'm the dad. I'm the old guy.
He's the older Jules. I'm the better looking Jules.
That's still yet to be seen. So we started that off, and it was the website shut down. And we were literally stuck like, okay, what do we do? And we stopped for a few months. We had a couple of runs that we were just kind of finishing out. And we revamped, and my son at the end of the year said, I want to bring it back. And I said, it's funny you should mention that. I want to bring it back too. And just bring it back as just a straightforward podcast where we do audio. And I started investing money in some of the equipment and fixing up the home office here and just getting it going for to be able to do the podcast. And both of us are musicians, which makes it really cool because I'm semi-retired. I don't play as much anymore. I only play a few gigs here and there. But my son still actively plays around town locally. And I like the podcast in the sense that you get to see the both worlds, the old, which is me, and the newer generation coming up in the industry, which is my son.
So those first episodes with, what he was talking about, the initial way, it was kind of like a Skype plus, like you can add a bunch of people and anyone can kind of watch it in real time, get a free concert, talk to people, talk to the artist. And, that's all of our first season pretty much. We put out 2 episodes a week, which was a whole lot. And then to just stop kind of suddenly because the website shut down it was kind of, interesting to deal with that. So we were trying to get it back going and getting into the groove of it. So in 2017, we finally launched again. First season was about close to 50 episodes. And then,
that's a lot.
season 2 started again in 2017, and now we're on episode, I think, 8 or 9 now.
Yeah, I think the last one I listened to was number 9. And I didn't realize that first season had that many episodes, because that's a lot to listen to that now I'm going to have to do. So season 2 started with the first of the year, I guess, then.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the first Monday of 2017, we wanted to start off. We started planning again in December of last year, and we're just like, hey, let's make sure we get it going. Let's put a startup date as soon as we said something that we were going to launch, a lot of people were super happy, and it was really reassuring to us, just to see that people were excited about it still.
And on my end, when I started I said, when we come back, okay, he was still going to do his local scene stuff, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do what I know, which is the Tejano music industry, and I still have a lot of friends who play in the industry. And as soon as I started making phone calls to my friends, all of them said, yeah, I'll do it for sure. And I think you see that in the podcast where these guys are comfortable enough to open up and really tell some stories, and maybe tell some stories they shouldn't. But,
yeah, exactly.
But I've been very lucky and fortunate that these guys trust me enough to sit down with me and just open up.
A lot of it too is because we're musicians like them. Because I mean, not a lot of people would understand what musicians go through other than another musician. So they kind of confide in us like, oh, well, you've been there. Like I've been in that situation, and then we just kind of trade stories, and it's a really interesting experience, and it's a whole lot of fun for both of us to do it. I mean, we just talk to fellow, colleagues, friends, and get their story, and it's awesome.
Well, that's one of the things to me that I really enjoy is it's kind of a peek into a different world that you don't normally, or at least I don't normally, understand. Or there's a lot of terminology that I've learned. I'm still exactly trying to understand what a dicky lick is, but and that is not a profane thing. I understand that.
But the episode on Dickie, he's an icon in Tejano music as far as bass players.
Yeah.
And any bass player in that era knows that you copied his licks, because he just was so creative, and he was very, very shy as far as when he came in. He didn't even know what a podcast was, but he came anyway, and he trusted me. He says, I told my wife I was going to come do a podcast. And she's like, what's that? He said, I don't know, but he was going to go do it because he's a friend of mine,
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of what it is.
That was awesome though. And it has been some great stories. The most recent one, I think is Ernie Gonzales. He's talking about the time he had, or the time he's been working with George Strait. I mean, there's so much experience that these guys have, and y'all have. I think that it's great to share it with folks that normally don't understand that part of the world or that industry. So,
right.
In terms of the podcast itself, why? I mean, you talked a little bit about why maybe y'all wanted to do this, but what space do you think it fits? Because obviously we're in San Antonio, but it goes well beyond that. I've heard you talk about the folks in other countries that are listening to it and the number of downloads, or at least the volume and stuff. Why do you think it's taken off and it's been so, I guess, so well accepted?
I think just because it's like real, it's real people talking. It's not, we're not afraid to say anything. We're not afraid to like expose ourselves and be ourselves. And, that makes our guest feel okay to share, themselves with, a recording device, but then, a larger audience, at the end.
And you've done some,
I'm sorry. It's kind of like you're a fly on the wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You're hearing these almost like you're backstage somewhere, and that's literally what we do is tell stories backstage, and that's kind of that same experience. You're just a fly on the wall listening in, and it's. I think it's cool from my end because I've always said, even in the podcast, through telling their story, I hope to tell my story because. I've got a lot of stories, and I just don't want to ramble on about them. I'll incorporate it into.
I need somebody to listen to.
Yeah, I could, trust me, but I prefer to kind of tell both sides of it, and
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that's great about podcasting because the way most people listen to them, at least the way I do, is I'm usually sitting at work and I've got the earbuds in. So it really is. It's kind of a personal, kind of intimate kind of situation where you really are listening to the person. You're not distracted by what else is going on in the house while you're watching TV or whatever else. So it's a great medium to do it with. So in terms of personal history as musicians, how did you guys get into this, and what have you been doing over your careers?
I have been a professional musician. This is the dad talking.
Jules.
Big Jules.
Yeah.
For about 30 some odd years. And back when I was 15 or so, it was Tejano music was everywhere. If you were in San Antonio, it was in the quinceaneras here in town. It was your mom and dad played it in the car. It was everywhere. So it was appealing as a young person. And I go into some of that into the podcast, how today's kids aren't into it or not as much as it was back then. But when I was growing up, it was everywhere. So naturally, when I started playing bass at about 15 years old, and I'm 46 right now, something like that, 47.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So when I started playing, that was the easiest way to make money, was just to play in a Tejano band. And that's how I got started. And you go through this progression of playing with these local bands, and then out of the blue, by luck, you get picked up by a national act such as Emilio Navaira, which is who I spent 11 years playing with and recording albums and traveling all over the country and visiting other countries, Canada, Switzerland, Mexico, and being able to travel through music is really incredible. And I'm grateful for that opportunity that he gave me when I joined the band in 1994. Now that I'm older and I really don't want to travel anymore, I got a quote unquote real job, and so that's kind of what I do now. And I still do gigs every now and then, but I'm not as busy as my son, who's kind of on that upswing of where I was when I first started.
This is Jules, smaller Jules, Jules the Human. That's my thing to separate.
That's right.
From my
I've
dad.
seen that.
Yeah, Jules the Human. So I play trombone, which is a brass instrument, and I kind of went through all middle school, high school, and then I went into college at University of North Texas for a few years.
Shout out to North Texas.
Shout out to North Texas. I learned so much there about classical trombone. I studied music performance there. I got into program, was really good, and then I kind of came home to San Antonio, and I kind of stopped music for a little while to try and figure out what I wanted to do with music, and just kind of start loving it even more. And I just kind of jumped into this sort of local scene here in San Antonio, and they just embraced me with open arms, literally, pretty much, because I joined one of the group Sugar Skulls that I started out with, and just instantly first show I went to over at Imagine Books and Records, I just said, "Hey, I'm in Sugar Skulls," and everybody just gave me a huge hug, and that was like amazing. And as soon as that happened, I just knew this is where I wanted to be, and such a loving local music scene. And now I'm playing with Deer Vibes, a band we played at South by Southwest last year at an official showcase. Volcan, which is sort of going off of what my dad used to play, but it's a little spin on that. It's a indie orchestra latina, which is a Latin orchestra, but with some indie rock vibes to that. So we're like the only one here in San Antonio, the only indie Latin orchestra here in San Antonio. But I just played the rodeo with them a couple days ago or a week ago or so. So I'm kind of doing that, and we're just in it. I'm just in it, trying to do as much as I can. There's this whole upswing of the whole local scene is building up with this cohesion and building together and being a family, and that's amazing, and I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it.
At one time my son was like in 4 different bands, and I was like, where are you going now? I'm going to go play with so and so. I was like, oh man.
It was kind of like 10, so it was a little bit of everything. A bunch of other bands that I joined here that aren't like rock bands, quote unquote. I played in a bunch of ensembles as well, because I am a classical trombonist at heart. But that's kind of what I'm doing now, and then I'm kind of doing the podcast and have another podcast, and we're gonna do some other stuff, some other cool stuff coming out soon. So
I haven't listened to that one yet, but I have to, because that kind of speaks to me as well. Is the Nerdy Stuff podcast?
Nerdy Things podcast.
Nerdy Things podcast. Yeah,
and then me and my dad are gonna do something cool, and then I'm hopefully gonna have another project. So, I have a lot of things coming out.
Aren't we all nerds at heart?
Oh my gosh. Look, and my daughter follows in my footsteps a lot more than she'd like. And I'll admit this right now. We went to Comic-Con here in San Antonio, I guess, last year. And it was the first one that we'd ever been to anywhere, because we usually have lived in smaller cities. And this is, just so much different. We just love it. So we went down to it, and my daughter had her own outfit. She was dressed up as someone, what is the name of the character? Because I should know this off the top of my head. From Doctor Who.
Oh boy! Okay,
so my son loves Doctor Who.
I can't think of her.
That's all you had to say.
Yeah, she's one of the companion, the person that had the British Union Jack shirt
Rose
Tyler. Yes, because we
Okay.
had a photo op with her and with David Tennant.
Oh my goodness!
She did the outfit with the Union Jack shirt, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do because I'm a pretty big guy. So it's like whatever I find, I got to find either custom or I got to find I don't know where. So I ordered this outfit. So I was in my own take, I was the Peter Griffin Han Solo. So. And I tell you what, I had a ball. I had more fun, just walking around meeting people, probably than the rest of the show because, that was what it's about is meeting everybody and having a good time.
Did you do the?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I had a guy who 3D printed me. It was from overseas, one of the blasters, and I, had that.
Oh, wow.
I just had a ball with it, and then, now people are going to look at me like, oh my gosh,
I have yet to go to one. I think you've been to one, right?
Yeah, I've been to one. I think one of the first Alamo City Comic Cons, and it's grown so much in the few years that it's been up, and it's amazing.
I would love to go. I'm just not that big on standing in line.
Oh, yeah, there were some lines, that's for sure. Well, one of the things we're trying to do, I'm kind of getting off topic a little bit, but one of the things we're trying to do is get connection, and I've got some emails out right now with the folks because I think it's a 5-year anniversary, so I want to try to do a show in the future about that because I think it's become a big part of the community, at least every year.
Definitely.
So, but anyway, kind of get off topic. But back to a little bit to the music that you play and the music that has been, I guess, a big focus on the episodes that I've been listening to, specifically were the TMS Musicos, I think is what they're called. So Tejano, what is Tejano for people like me who didn't grow up with it?
Jeez, if some historian listens to me talk about it, they're going to say he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, you lived it, so you know.
It came from the conjunto, which is an old. Oh, geez, I don't even want to throw. I don't want to throw fake facts out there because I'll get taunted.
I mean, it's a style, right?
Like it's a style of music. Certain beat. It comes from conjunto. It's Latin based. It's oh man, whenever somebody asks me what Tejano music is, I always say, "Do you know Selena?" I said, "That's what it was," But you get the cumbias, the rancheras. It's a working man's music basically. It's a blue collar music where people really just want to dance and much like any music wants to get away from what their day to day activities. But you still see Tejano. There's a difference between norteño and Tejano. Very slight difference. And you hear a lot of norteño in Mexico. Tejano's more Texas-based, Tex-Mex they call it, which is, and you'll see some combinations with accordion and keyboards, and sometimes a basic conjunto is mainly a small group of 3 or 4 guys, which is an accordion, guitar, drums, and maybe a bass. It depends on the variation of the conjunto music. It is a style of music. With the main style being cumbias and rancheras. Don't ask me to define it, 'cause I wouldn't know.
Well, I'm gonna have to do some listening, then I'll understand. It sounds like it's one of those things that you know when you hear it, right?
Right, and it's like I said, back when I was younger, it was everywhere. It's my dad listened to a lot of conjunto music, and my mom listened to back then it was called Chicano music. And which kind of evolved into Tejano music, because my mom listened to bands like Latin Breed, and it was considered more of a Chicano style when they had the whole Chicano movement back in the 60s, 70s, around there. Yeah. And it kind of migrated into the Tejano, what it is now. And I think it's just a combination of all those things, Latin, because you'll hear salsa-based cumbias that are Tejano, but you hear bits of salsa, you hear bits of jazz in there, you'll hear bits of conjunto, you'll hear bits of rock. Some of the songs we did were based on rock intros, or just kind of converted it into. There's some songs that people don't realize that were actually originally thought of from a rock song that we just made it to sound Tejano. So it's a bit of a lot of things. The history on it, which I'm horrible at, is it's a rich culture of blue collar work, working music that just meant to go drink and dance and have fun.
Now, because it's a lot of Texas history and a lot of Texas focus, it sounds like. Was San Antonio a really kind of a hotbed of it when it was really popular in the 80s and 90s that you've talked about?
Back in the 80s, 90s, it was huge. It was a huge market. You had so many record labels coming in to try and cash in on the industry itself. They were buying up the local, the smaller labels and buying up their catalog. Labels like Sony and Capitol came in and bought these and created divisions because of it, and you're talking about this small market that grew really, really fast, and going from playing locally at these small halls here in San Antonio to playing, arenas and huge. I played casinos in Vegas. I played Bally's, Mirage, Rio, several of the casinos, and those are huge, and even playing, I don't know if you've ever seen the last Selena concert in Houston. I mean, we were there with her, playing with her.
Wow.
We did that show as well, and there was 66,000 people there to see both acts.
You said something on one of the episodes about playing to like 70,000 people, and I was like, I can't even imagine standing in front of 70,000 people.
Wow. That gig in Houston, I think there was like 66 around there, and that was probably the only time I was ever nervous because the band had to go out. They dragged the stage in the middle of the arena. It was for the rodeo. They pull it out, and they said the band has to go out on the stage as they pull it out. So when they're doing that, the lights are still on, and I could see everybody, and that's the only time I ever felt sick because I realized how many people were there, but once the lights went out, I couldn't see them. So out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
But even playing in Mexico, as a lot of the shows we did in Mexico, you're looking at maybe 70, 80,000 sometimes. Just huge crowds, and it's a rush that unless you've done it, you'll never understand what it feels like. And like I said, I've been fortunate enough to be able to do those things, and looking back, I love looking back at it and seeing all the stuff we did.
Now, one of the things I noted in one of the recent episodes, I don't know if it's the very most recent one or one right behind that or something, but you were talking about being nervous one other time, and that I think was when you were doing your solo. You did a solo. Yeah. So what is the difference in performing it? Both of y'all do this. Is there a different approach in how you take to a small group or a large crowd, or the way you play? Is it different or what? I was
a side man, so I was never the front man. I always played with other artists. I played with bands like Shelly Lattes, Bobby Pulido, and mainly Emilio Navaira. So I was always on the side. So the spotlight was always on the artist and the singer. So when I got out of music for a while and I wanted to get back into it, I said, I'm just going to do my own thing and just play guitar and play songs, cover songs that I want to play. And when you're up there, it's a difference between being on the side of the stage and being in the front of the stage. Because when you're in front of the stage, you just feel naked, because everybody's looking at you. But the end result is once you get that feedback from the crowd, there's nothing else like it. There's nothing else like it. And I want to go back to when my son was in middle school.
Oh boy.
Yeah. When he was in middle school, as a musician, I didn't want him to get into the music industry. That was the last thing I wanted for him. Because I knew the struggles that I had as far as not being able to know whether you're going to have a gig or, is money going to come in this week because this gig fell through or not. So when he was in middle school, he had his first concert, and I believe he had a solo in that first concert. Mm-hmm. And he stood up and played, and I asked him afterwards, I said, well, how'd you like it? And his eyes just lit up and said, I loved it. I want to do it again. I said, oh man.
Yeah, it's over.
It's over.
So I guess I had like the opposite because, I guess I had both because, in college I was doing, from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m, just in so many different ensembles, so many different classes, college classes and all that. And just constantly playing. And I would play in, large groups, on stage with like a symphony or something like that. And then I would play, sort of like recitals, just kind of solo by myself a lot of the time. And when you're by yourself, it's totally well, for me at least, my opinion is it's totally different than just having the reassuring, seeing somebody next to you and seeing their eyes like, oh, we got this, like we're in this together, to where you can only rely on yourself when you're by yourself, and again, all eyes are on you and things like that. But definitely when I moved here in San Antonio again and was with all the groups that I'm in right now, it's so fun. It's so great to just be next to somebody, be next to all my groups are like 10 plus people, to be on stage with all these people that are doing the same thing, that want the same thing, that are looking for that feeling that only music can bring. And it's amazing when you're standing next to those guys, and it's just an amazing feeling that you can't really explain.
It's a high you'll never understand. When I was I had a music school for about 6 years, and I taught lessons to students. And one of the funnest things that we ever did was put on recitals and have these young and old adults too. I had students from 6 up to 80 something years old, and it was just amazing to get them on stage, because it reminded me of my first time, because you never have another first time. And for a lot of these kids and adults that had never been on stage in front of people, to watch them struggle and get through it was very rewarding, because I got to reenact that feeling of playing for the first time again through them.
Yeah, that's got to be amazing. I mean, it really is. Especially, you've probably seen a whole lot of highs and lows in your career, but you're seeing this in a really high point for them in doing this for the first time. Yeah, that's pretty neat. I mean, in a very, very small way, I'm sure, comparatively, I get nervous before I do any of these kind of things. And we've done podcasts over the years for a lot. And as soon as I start talking, like we start having a conversation, I can relax. And I feel like, okay, yeah, we're actually, before this, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? And how am I going to do it? So I'm sitting here writing all my notes down and all this other kind of thing. So it sounds like, I guess for everybody to a different degree, maybe once you get into something that you enjoy, those butterflies go away. But I don't know. I can't even imagine, doing what you guys did. That's awesome. I think it's really cool. Well, one of the things, too, I wanted to talk to y'all about, because we've connected online, too, through social media stuff. There's a group out there for San Antonio podcasters. So if there's other people out there who have podcasts, so look for that and join that group. We're actually going to be trying to do, it looks like, a meetup in March.
Yeah.
But in terms of doing podcasting, have you guys, through doing the podcast here, has that connected you with other people locally who are doing podcasts, apart from us, for example? Is there a community out there, I guess, that is helping each other?
I'm lucky because my son handles all the social media stuff.
Okay.
So he's going to take this.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely during the first year that we first started with season 1, we just, I dove into everything, because I like to do, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it all. I want to do, encompass the entire thing. So I was out there looking for podcasters, looking for different podcasts, asking people, hey, are you in San Antonio? What's going on? And we ended up building a group of about 6 podcasts. That was a short run of the Alamo City Podcast Network, which included Talk on Tap, which is a craft beer podcast. Oh man, sorry, I was gonna name all of them. There's like six or seven of them. The 210 local media. Mario Zamaron, he does a few podcasts here. He did 3 at a time, but he had a kid and he's doing more family stuff now. I think he's going to get started again, but we had a group of about 6 podcasts that we kind of just, bounced ideas off of, talked together, and we were under this name, Alamo City Podcast Network. And then I found the podcasters group after that, and Jennifer, I think she's on the podcasting group as well. She even got me a job working with her for one of her podcasting projects. So big shout out to her for doing that. And definitely, it's a really awesome group to be a part of. And there's podcasts I know that are popping up like all the time. I know of 2 at least that just popped up maybe last month that are in my age group, that are in my sort of scene of the local music and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's always growing. People are turning a new look on the podcast, medium, and it's really awesome.
I'm lucky that TMS Texas Music Spotlight is all the social media stuff is all him because
well, it's out there. I mean, y'all are doing a great job.
He's tweeting, he's Facebooking, he's putting us on Google Play, and the only thing I did was put us on iTunes, and that was about it.
I'll tell you what, it's probably been a couple of years since we did a show, and going looking. I mean, Google Play, the music thing, wasn't even out there at that time.
Right.
So, I mean, having to go back and learn this stuff again and look and see all the different outlets. There are definitely more ways for people to find podcasts now. And I mean, there's folks doing podcasts now that probably, didn't know when they shoved the mic in front of them, they probably didn't know what a podcast was.
Right.
Because it's such a great, easy medium for people to have a good time, meet some folks like we are, and learn more about the community. Our whole goal with this one, because when we moved here, this was back in the end of 2015, I looked online to try to find anything I could listen to about San Antonio, about the area. And there were a couple things, but there wasn't really much about the community and the culture of the community that I could find. So the idea with this one was, well, we've been here a little over a year now. We'll try to get together and meet some people and learn more about the community in a lot of different ways. And then hopefully, that one, it enriches our life in living here, because we plan to be here for as long as we possibly can, and hopefully as long as we're living here.
Real quick, where's your favorite taco place?
Oh my gosh. That's a good question. I've been to some. The one that I've been to the most, because I work over in the medical center, is Data Point. Right on Wurtzbach. But I can't say I've been to a ton of them. I can tell you one story I mentioned in the first episode we did with Judge Wise. I got there first week at the office, and I said, I'll pick up some donuts. And the guy's like, why are you buying donuts? And I said, well, that's what you do in an office. He's like, no, breakfast tacos.
Breakfast tacos, right? Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I can do that. That's not a problem. But I don't know. I'm definitely looking for some suggestions. We had a friend in, who I guess probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, Jay Ducote. He came in as runner-up on the Next Food Network Star a year or two ago, and he's opening a taco place in Baton Rouge. So he did his Texas taco tour. So he and 3 of his friends have traveled. I think they're probably back home now, but they probably went to 5 or 6 different cities. They made Cajun food and different things in different places, and then went and tried all these different restaurants out. So we met them at the place at Data Point, like I said, because it's close to where I work. But I don't know. That's a really hard question, especially in this town. Where are your favorites?
Bandera Road, right outside 410, a place called Rita's.
Okay.
It's right next. I think it's right next to a donut shop right there, right outside Bandera and 410, right outside. Great tacos, and also Henry's Puffy Tacos has good. Regular tacos. Somebody
told me that when we were visiting here for my job interview. We went on the river tour, of course, and the guy who was piloting the boat, or the tour guide, my daughter asked, "Where can we get Puffy Tacos?" And he was, because we had read about that, and he was so excited. He said, "Oh, you know about Puffy Tacos?" And I was like, "Yeah." So that was one of the first things we did. And
I have yet to have
Henry's.
a Puffy Taco from there, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I just get regular tacos.
Oh, wow. I've got to go. They've been there. My daughter and my wife have been there. I've not been there yet. But that's something we need to try Rita's. No, we need to try Rita, because we were just out that way this past weekend. So that gives us a place to go. We go to a church that's out in that direction. So that gives us a good excuse.
There you go.
Oh, well. Well, anyway, I guess the whole thought is just kind of talking about the history. We've done some of that. I guess one question I've got, because now that I've listened to a lot of what the episodes that you guys have published recently, and I'll go back and listen to more, where can people that are interested in the music find the music itself? Where do we find what you guys have done and recorded, or just suggestions that you've got for us to go out and people that want to learn more about the music y'all created?
I did. Emilio recently passed away last year, and that was a big deal. I mean, I did about 7 or 8 albums with him. So anything between after 94, I did with him. I've done recordings for other places. I mean, but if you want to hear something other than Tejano, I mean, there's a lot of great music out there, and that's one thing about doing this podcast is that when we first started doing it last year, we started getting exposed to all these great bands from Texas, and that we had never heard of before. The one that always stands out for me, and the one that I love and I hate it because the podcast was kind of messed up. We had technical difficulties.
Yeah, we were in our infant stages of audio,
and our feed shut off, and they couldn't hear my audio, so I had to text my son. I said, "You have to take over," and so he got on and took over and kind of finished it. But the band is called Calliope Musicals from Austin, Texas,
yeah,
and they are just an amazing band, not only to listen to, but if you ever watch their videos on YouTube, some of their concerts. It's just so refreshing to see something. These they're not too young. They're in their 20s.
I mean,
right?
they're around my age. Yeah,
yeah, but they're
older 20s.
Their stage show is just really out there.
Show,
it's a show, and one show from Canada they played in Canada, and the girl comes out into the audience and gives everybody candles, and they all sit down on the ground while the band plays, and she's singing there in the audience, sitting on the floor with candles, candlelights.
Yeah,
amazing.
They came recently to San Antonio at the Paper Tiger down on St. Mary Street, and like I went because we had done the podcast with them, and I've listened to their music. Me and my dad listened to their music, and I'm not afraid to say that I was like crying at the end just because of how happy I was and how happy their music made me.
Wow.
And just the interaction and just the whole ambiance of it. And I was just like, oh my God, this is an amazing musical experience. And they're from Austin, Texas. Like they're people that are around here. There's San Antonio bands that make us feel this way, and music everywhere. And it's just about going out and just trying something new. I mean, St. Mary Street is like a hotbed of musical talent, and a bunch of bands that play there all the time on the weekend and during the week, and pretty much just go down there if you want to go see some musicians just playing, or
some of the other people we've had on the podcast, like some of the first ones, like Laura Marie, singer-songwriter. She does a lot of stuff here in town. And Buddy Vargas does some of the more country stuff. He plays all over the area, San Antonio, New Braunfels, and he's very busy. Jason Martinez from Grupo Vida, they have two bands, a Tejano band and a country band, which is the same band, but they do country gigs and they do Tejano gigs as well. Some of the artists we have, who are some of the ones you have that?
Elena Lopez, she was really fun. The Elena Lopez episode.
A great singer. I saw her. Where did I see her? At the with Yosa.
Yeah, at the Tobin Center.
Yeah,
she played with the Yosa when they did their Beatles show. Oh, I was in it. Yeah, when we did the Beatles show at the Tobin Center. Yeah, Beatles tribute show. Yeah,
she's one of the ones that I told my son, I said, "Who's that girl singing?" Just amazing talent here in San Antonio that you don't, unless you get out there and see some of these shows. Like Yosa's another great company that. It's a youth orchestra that puts on shows throughout the year.
I've heard about that.
They're getting ready to put on
the Prince tribute show, The Purple Rain. I think it's coming out this coming week or so. But yeah, I was a part of Yosa as well. And then I went to China with them, so that was cool.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, there's totally just tons of musical opportunities if you are a musician out there, or just looking to enjoy music. I mean, even I've had people just talk to me, message me on Facebook. Hey, I know you do this podcast. Can you recommend me some music? I like this band. Can you recommend me some bands? And I'm like, sure, totally. I'd love to. Like that's fun for me. Just figuring that out, what you can like.
My son is building up a record collection. Can you believe that?
Now is this like real, like vinyl, or is this
real vinyl?
Oh wow,
yeah. It's coming back.
I did. Oh, tell me. Look, there's the thing that it's like to me would be like the Holy Grail. When I was in college, and I'm about your age, Julian, the senior over here.
Old.
So that'll date me right away. But when I was in college, way back when, I went to Tulane in New Orleans, and WTUL is the progressive rock station that they had. Mm-hmm. It's still doing its thing. But back then we had this whole room, I mean, floor to ceiling with vinyl, and it was all the original stuff that was played on the radio station back from probably the 60s on. And we went back there, and I had not realized that it had been like 20 years, because time flies. Right. I went back there and it was gone. And I'm like, well, what happened to all of this stuff? And they said, "Oh, we've got it in the other room. We just don't use it for anything." And it's like, boy, are you missing out? You know,
Yeah.
it was.
You
Oh, it was
want to
just
sell
something.
it?
Yeah. Oh, tell me. I mean, this must have been thousands of them. So it's just sort of like, and that was the other thing. As I'm looking, there was a sign that my roommate had made with the call letters on it. That was hanging in there. And I'm like, oh, I knew the guy who made that. And then I realized, well, that was like 20 years ago. The guy sitting here behind the mic wasn't born when he made this song.
Oh, wow.
But it was a brief experience for me doing that, but I really enjoyed it. And the music was the main thing. And I think one of the things I'm guilty of is I don't get out enough and actually hear live music. You know, it's easy
I'm
nowadays
too.
to see it online and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But you mentioned a couple places, but where can people find, you mentioned that, was it St. Mary Street?
What's the actual street? Is it North St. Mary? North St. Mary Street has a ton of venues there and great food as well. Cheeseman just opened. They have what is it called? Tycoon Flats is great for food as well.
Okay.
Ton of venues that are just jam packed all together. Kind of like Paper Tiger, The Mix, all that. La Botanica, a bunch of places together. And then there's some places that are a little more obscure, but it's pretty awesome. If you're kind of in the younger age bracket, I guess, you can go to Imagine Books and Records, which is a bookstore during the day, but then they turn it into a venue at night.
Well, they don't actually turn it. They just throw musicians in there.
Yeah,
and
there
say,
you go.
It's a pretty cool vibe. I went there one time. I was like, oh, this is actually really cool.
Yeah. I mean, and all these venue owners are friends of mine, and it's really awesome that we have this kind of just family mentality. I know the lead singer of Dear Vibes just opened up the Ventura, which is on 1011 Avenue B next to Rosella's Coffee, which is an awesome place if you want to like relax and get some work done or whatever. It's a coffee shop, pretty awesome. A little more obscure as well is Vape Here, which is kind of close to Imagine Books and Records. You can just like Google all these names because I'm bad with directions. But Vape Here is a vape. Yeah, I'm really bad with directions. Vape Here is a vape shop, but again, they just turns into a venue during the weekends. Or I also play Dungeons and Dragons there, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
part of the nerd thing.
Yeah,
that's right, Nerdy Things podcast.
Yeah, so like all these just spaces are just places for people to put their creativity in. It's just like, hey, can I play on Saturday? Can I play at your place on Saturday? Sure. Like, please just tell people online or whatever, and we'll make a thing of it. And it's really an awesome environment.
Now for the older folks. Okay.
Where should we go, really?
I have, there's only one place I'm going to bring up because it's a place called Santa's Place, as in Santa, Christmas Santa, Santa's Place on 417 Spriggsdale. It's on the east side of San Antonio, and it's a little hole in the wall place. But I got to jam. A friend of mine that I used to play with, Albert Garcia, has a jam session every Sunday, and I got to help him out one time, and it was the most amazing musical experience for me. You know, mind you, I've been playing 30-some years. I played, you know, some of the biggest gigs you can imagine. We toured with Alan Jackson, we toured with Clay Walker, whatnot. But I had the most fun playing this jam session with him because just the way it was set up, the people who went there were all dressed nice, and it was you know, I pulled up and I was like, is this the place? I'm not sure I'm in the right place. It's just like a little hole in the wall place. I walked in, the people were all dressed up nice. They have a you do have to pay to get in, but for the first hour, I believe it starts at 7. For the first hour, the band plays and nothing but their tunes, you know, like, you know, standards, blues, jazzy kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's just great musicians. And then after the first hour, they break for a little buffet they have on the side. So everybody gets their food and they eat and have a good time, talk, get their drinks, and they sit back down. And all these musicians come in from everywhere. They come in for the jam session after the dinner break, and it's just amazing because all these guys are taking turns, get up on stage playing different songs. You got horn players taking different rides and soloing, and just amazing. I had the most greatest time. I even came home to my wife and said, "Oh man," she said, "What's wrong?" And I was just smiling. I said, "I had such a great time tonight," because it was just refreshing to be able to do something like that. And the other part of that was, you know, I've been doing a local scene for a little while. The people who went there went to see the music, and they appreciated everything we did. And just being able to play next to some of these, and these are older cats, so they know all the standards. They were just soloing like nothing, and I'm just blown away by it. So props to Albert Garcia, who puts on that every Sunday at Santa's Place. So
I'm writing that down as we speak. So Sundays,
yeah, it's a great place.
That does. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. All right.
Food's good too.
Oh, and the food's good too. That's also very good. One of the shows we used to do was a food-based podcast, and it was about the food of the region we lived in. And one of the best things was that when we interviewed people from restaurants, they often brought samples. So that
oh man,
that's never a bad thing.
I think we should do that. That's our next podcast.
It's a reason to do one right there, the taco podcast. You can try every place around town. That's right. Oh, well. Yeah. Well, I guess we've been going a while. I just noticed that we're over 50 minutes already.
Yeah,
thanks for doing this. And then thanks for everybody who's hanging in there listening, because this is definitely, I think, has been a lot of fun. So I guess to kind of bring us around, to wrap us up, what's the future of TMS? What are you guys planning for the rest of season 2, and any ideas for the future?
We're going to take over the world.
And you're doing Facebook, right? Because you're doing some live stuff on Facebook. I
yeah, my podcasts are, because I wanted to keep that interaction kind of like the old format we used to have with the first season. So mine are actually recorded on Facebook Live. And so if you watch the Facebook Live, you see the unedited version. You see everything, including them walking into my house and sitting down. And before we even get started, you see everything. Because as soon as they walk into my house, I say, "Do you mind if we Facebook Live?" And they always say, "Sure." So it's already running.
Yeah. And then I started doing some live performances, because I do have music in my sessions or my podcast. So
and that's
I do
part of the old format too, as well.
Yeah, we had music in the first season. Have the musician play a few songs and stuff like that. So I've been Facebook living. I tried it out. I think you shared it as well, or you saw it.
Yeah, I
saw you comment.
I did. I watched that.
It's going to be coming out next month or so. But yeah, I think we're going to do that. My dad's going to do his full live Facebook Live thing. And then I'm just going to record maybe a song or two that the person plays here at the studio. So,
but I recommend listening to some of the older stuff. I mean, we've got some amazing musicians from all over Texas that have shared their music without skipping a beat and saying, yeah, sure, we're playing.
Yeah. And I mean, the way we found the band Calliope Musicals, I mean, when we first started, I just wanted to get as many people as I could. We didn't know what we were doing. And then I just posted on everything, posted on all the social media. And then they found me on Reddit, and they were just like, hey, can we do this? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then they ended up being one of my favorite bands now. So yeah, definitely just go back and listen, pick a random band name, whatever suits your fancy, and then hopefully you'll discover somebody that you like, and hopefully your next favorite band.
And as far as the future, he's got his Nerdy Things project. I think we're going to work on another project for the local scene, and that's going to be a short podcast. But we've got some ideas. Just kind of making sure that we cover all our bases before we actually release or say anything about it.
Oh, that's yeah. And I would, I guess, to next step is, where can people find you and stay in tune, so that one, they'll hear about what's going on with TMS, but also when you're announcing new things down the road. How do people find you guys?
Yeah, sure. To find Texas Music Spotlight, it's at Texas Music Pod, Texas Music POD on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We post pictures of our artists, Texas Music Podcast on Instagram. And to actually follow us, we're on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Yeah, you can find us at TMS Podcast or Texas Music Spotlight on any of those.
TexasMusicSpotlight.com actually takes you to the Facebook page. So.
Cool. That works too.
That's exactly. That's how I found the Facebook page the other night when I was looking for some info. So yeah, I would definitely recommend people go and check it out. Do the follows. Go to the website and get to that Facebook page. Follow the page. And subscribe to the podcast. I think you'll really get a kick out of it. You'll learn a lot. I know I have. And you'll have a good time, because I found myself in the car, looking like a lunatic, laughing at some of the stories, at a red light. But I've really enjoyed it. And as much as I've enjoyed talking to you guys tonight, I mean, it's really been fun. And hopefully we can get you guys back on at another time and talk about some more stuff. But this has been a kick. And if you've got any suggestions yourselves for folks that we can talk to, just to get them on our show, to learn a little bit more about the community, share some things. It doesn't matter what the topic is. We'd really appreciate it if you can give us a holler.
For sure, man. For sure.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
It was a lot of fun.
Always welcome. And thank you, everybody, for listening to the show. We really appreciate it. This has been episode number 4. And again, I'll recommend go back and listen to episodes number 1, 2, and 3. We had a little bit about lesser-known San Antonio history in episode number 1. Episode number 2 was about Fiesta Medals and the Fiesta Medal Maniacs on Facebook, which unfortunately we're now part of because we've been buying medals. And we actually have a medal for the podcast. So if you're a collector of that, go out to our website at beyondriverwalk.com. You'll see the design we've got there. We have very, very few of them, but we do have some, and we're donating the money to local Ronald McDonald House. If you are interested. And then also the last week was SA Food Tours I mentioned at the head of the show here. So you can find us at Beyond Riverwalk on Twitter and on Instagram and on Facebook. Look for Beyond the Riverwalk Newcomers Guide to San Antonio, Texas podcast. And we would love it if you'd follow us and subscribe as well. But thank you, Julian, for being here.
Thank you, Kevin.
Well, we'll count you among our new friends, and if we can ever do anything for you, help promote anything or whatever, you please give us a holler, because I've had a ball. All right, everybody. Well, y'all take care, and we'll see y'all again beyond the Riverwalk.